Hello, my name's Naomi Sesford and I work for the Scottish Borders Early Years Inspire team. Welcome to our third session of our Play Pedagogy Professional Learning programme, The Balance of the Day. Okay, so this professional learning session will follow the SPCV training format and it aims to be as interactive as possible and will include core input, reflective questions and follow-up activities, leading to new understanding. Please use the pause function throughout the presentation where needed. At the end of the presentation, you'll be set a follow-up activity which needs to be completed in time for our follow-up session on Tuesday, the 21st of January. This will be live on Teams. Professional learning is just a seed for change, and without positive planned action to change to practice in the classroom, there will be no impact. The follow-up session is a mandatory requirement to completing this training, and you can sign up to this on Business World. The aims of today are to reflect on the key messages from national guidance about providing a balance of experiences, to understand how to facilitate a balanced approach to play pedagogy through intentional and responsive planning, using a balance of child-led, adult-led and adult-initiated experiences, to understand the role of the adult in supporting and extending children's learning through child-led and adult-initiated learning, and to reflect on what the balance of experience looks like in your own practice. Firstly, a quick recap on our previous session, Quality Learning Environments, where we learned the importance of having a quality play environment to enable our children to learn through their play. We are reminded from Realising Ambition that the learning environment in the early stages of primary school should not look or feel starkly different from the motivating ELK environment. It states that the level of provocation might be greater and the interaction might be more challenging and experiences on offer might be different, but the school environment should be conducive of learning through play. It also shares Fabian's view that in early education, children continue to learn by playing and they do not stop learning through interactive processes and direct experiences just because they change classes. Realising Ambition also recognises that when children move into Primary 1, through collaboration with ELK, teachers should build on what the children already knows and can do, avoiding the fresh start approach. Building the curriculum too, so that when transition between ELK and P1 is too abrupt, it can damage children's confidence and progress. And as we know from Realising Ambition, the learning environment is a totality of the learning spaces, experiences and interactions. In ELK, children spend most of their day exploring and learning through play in rich indoor and outdoor environments. Adults in ELK spend a large part of the day observing and interacting with children during their play to extend and move their learning forward. When children reach us in Primary 1, we need to ensure that children still have this rich learning experience. Of course, the balance of play will look different, as children in Primary 1 will begin to experience a little more direct teaching. However, the environment will facilitate the majority of the play. We must continue to recognise the value of play and build on what children already know. And establishing a balanced approach to learning and teaching will ensure that our children are given the time and space to play and learn. So to get started, we'd like you to think of 5 words or phrases that you want your children in your class to be. Please pause the video and do this. So hopefully happy and engaged are on most of your lists, which may also include other attributes such as confidence, curiosity, independence, creativity and resilience, and of course there will be many more. We know that these can all be achieved through high quality play pedagogy. Far Levers, who we have mentioned in previous training, is a pioneer in early years education. He proposes that emotional well-being and involvement as being essential pillars to children's learning and development. He promotes experiential education, which focuses on the perspective of the learner. We know that there are differences in a child's brain from when they are doing something mechanically at the moderate level to when they are highly engaged in meaningful play. Farley's Leuven scale descriptors help us to measure levels of involvement or well-being for our learners. When children are deeply engaged, their brain is developing and new synapses are being formed. This means that the neurons in the brain are connecting and transmitting knowledge and learning. I'm sure that we can all think of times when we have seen children playing at that level 5 engagement, where they are engrossed in what they are doing. However, we can probably also think of times where children are engaged at level 2 or 3, perhaps with a task that we have set up, but they are not intrinsically motivated to do. Our aim is for our children to have level 4 or 5 of involvement. The children's happiness and well-being is our priority because without it they cannot relax, engage and learn with the opportunities on offer. It is important that we are constantly reviewing the effectiveness of the learning environment, the totality of our interactions, experiences and spaces, in promoting high-level engagement. Using a learning scale can support this. Further information about this can be found on our Play Padlet or on the Early Level portal. Realising ambition supports us in developing the right balance. It tells us that developing the right balance between child-initiated, adult-initiated and adult-directed experiences will depend on the uniqueness of the needs of each setting's children and wider contexts, including the cultural environment in which children learn and play. Please pause the slide now to read this further quote from Realising Ambition. Okay, so this helps us to consider the experiences we must give our young learners in order to support their holistic development. Learning need not only come from teacher-led activities, but from a high-quality learning environment where the value of play is recognised by adults and where children have the freedom to learn through their interests. As well as this, there are also core experiences within a child's day where learning can be promoted, and so it's important that these are also recognised. The role of the adult is to ensure the right balance of child-led, adult-led and adult-initiated learning which suits the developmental needs of the young children in their class. Knowing and understanding the needs and interests of your children is fundamental in providing this balance. We must take time to observe and interact with children through their play to understand what their needs and interests are. High-quality interactions are vital in order to support and extend children's learning through their play, and therefore we must plan time into our day to support learning through play. So as you know, Realising Ambition is Scotland's national practice guidance for early years, and it places value on the work of Julie Fisher. She explains the three main experiences in which children learn with any high-quality establishment as being adult-led, adult-initiated and child-led experiences. Within a child-centred play pedagogy approach, learning is enabled through these three contexts to learning. Learning is facilitated through the cyclical process of observations, interpretations and documentation of learning, and planning responsibly and intentionally through sensitive interactions, flexible experiences and rich learning spaces. Planning your days through these three contexts for learning ensures that children in Primary 1 experience broad and balanced opportunities for learning. So this is what we mean by the balance of the day, which is central to using play as a vehicle for high-quality learning, teaching and assessment. As we've just said, the balance of the day is central to using play as a vehicle for high-quality learning, teaching and assessment. Having a good balance of child-led, adult-led and adult-initiated learning ensures that we are providing this important balance of both responsive and intentional learning. In a high-quality, well-planned learning environment, the children will find interesting things to do that match their current needs and interests, and our observations of children as they interact with the spaces and experiences around them will tell us what we need to provide within their learning environment and experiences. Julie Fisher tells us that both kinds of experience, adult-initiated and child-initiated, are important, and one without the other will not give sufficiently broad and balanced opportunities for learning. And that comes from her book called Starting from the Child. Again, Realising Ambition tells us that a balance of responsive and intentional planning is essential in providing suitable experiences that connect with and extend children's interests and motivations. These approaches to learning and teaching are facilitated through a balanced approach. So what do each of these look like in practice? Please take a moment to read the slide. We will look at each of these experiences in more detail as we move through the presentation. When building the Curriculum 2, active learning in the early years was introduced in 2007. It detailed practical ways to introduce a more active approach to learning and teaching in the early years. Realising Ambition extends and strengthens the approaches introduced in this document. In building the Curriculum 2, it described active learning as learning which engages and challenges children's thinking using real-life and imaginary situations, and it takes full advantage of opportunities for learning which are presented by spontaneous play. We can think of this as being the same as child-led play, freely chosen and intrinsically motivated. Planned purposeful play. This may come through adult-initiated experiences such as a provocation or an invitation to learn. that has been planned in response to children's interests, a gap in their learning, or perhaps as an opportunity to allow children to explore a new concept. Events and life experiences can come from the rhythm of the seasons as we move through the year. The seasons and changes in nature provide a real-life, meaningful context to explore many aspects of the curriculum, as do events such as harvest, Christmas time, and other life experiences such as moving home, the arrival of a new sibling, going to a dentist, for example, all provide relevant and meaningful context for the children to explore through their play. Investigating and exploring. A high quality play environment will provide lots of opportunities for children to investigate and explore, and provocations planned by the teacher enable children to do this. And focused learning and teaching is what would come through what we would call our adult-led intentional learning. In Primary 1, this active learning approach should build on children's prior learning and experiences in ELK and is achieved through providing the balance of responsive and intentional experiences. Realising our vision shares some basic principle that guides our responsive and intentional planning and supports us when planning our balance of adult-led, adult-initiated and child-led learning approaches. It tells us to start with the child. What do the children's actions, emotions and words tell you? Is there a shared interest that children have? Could this be used to initiate further learning? Remember that your interactions with the child are a key aspect of the learning environment. When observing play, carefully consider when to step in and when to step back. This is a skill even the most experienced of us can often misjudge. Good well-being is essential to all children's learning, so we must also remember that creating a warm, nurturing, emotional environment for our children is vital. Open-ended experiences and materials allow more exploration. They often lead to deeper and more creative learning as the child is empowered by the fact that they cannot respond in a wrong way. Process is more important for learning than the end product at this stage. Different children will get different learning from apparently doing the same thing. And it is quite alright for us to initiate and suggest intentional learning experiences. As teachers, we know the knowledge and skills that we want our children to learn, so we plan intentional teacher-led experiences to do this. We may also intentionally plan an adult-initiated experience to support, extend, or challenge learning, as long as we are sensitive to the child's response. We must also realise the potential of our outdoor learning environments in providing a rich, challenging and motivating environment to learn in. Outdoor learning is an entitlement for all children and should be a regular and progressive experience. Outdoor environments often contain more opportunity and stimulate children's curiosity and wonder for learning than the indoor playrooms and classrooms. So let's explore what teacher adult-led learning looks like. This is intentional pre-planned learning, and the teachers focus children's thinking with a predetermined learning intention. Learners, of course, still require direct teaching of the acquisition of the basic skills of literacy and numeracy. However, these teacher-directed sessions need to be highly engaging and short and snappy. By following this model, we are acknowledging what is appropriate for the stage of development for our children. And remember that this focused adult-led time doesn't always have to be indoors. Outdoors also provide lots of opportunities for teacher-led learning and provides an engaging and motivating space to learn. Most teachers think it's fair to say like and feel most comfortable with adult-led learning because we like to be in control and it makes tracking of learning much easier. But we all know that this is not always the best model for learning. A balanced approach of all these three approaches leads to a high quality learning and teaching. In How Good Is Our Play for Learning, created by Forth Valley and West Lothian, they describe adult-initiated learning as fathoming or igniting children's thinking. The teacher sets up a starting point, an invitation, provocation or stimulus with planned intentions and then stands back to wait, watch and wonder. Children engage independently until the adults join to observe, interact or enhance the learning. In realising the ambition on page 63, it tells us we have a key role to play in providing motivating learning provocations and appropriate challenge. We can do this through a variety of teacher-initiated experiences. The key to success with teacher-initiated experiences, though, is to provide open-endedness. If the activity is too tightly prescribed, then there is only one way of doing it, and that is when the children interrupt to check that they have got it right. Education Scotland prompts us to consider, is it play or is it a playful activity set up by an adult? Sometimes as teachers we disguise things as play when they are still very much adult-led or adult-initiated activities. But we never really fool our children and they may still ask, can I go and play now? When referring to adult-initiated tasks, we suggest here that these can be split into closed and open tasks. As we've discussed, we will often set up tasks for the children to do as a follow-up from teaching input, and these are what we might call target tasks or a tabletop activity. These tend to be a pre-planned skill or objective, used closed resources with or without adult support, and the experience is planned to reinforce previously taught skills. These do have their place, but we must bear in mind that without the support of an adult, then we do not know how effective these types of activities are at moving learning forward. If we remember that adult-initiated activities should ignite children's thinking, then we can begin to see the difference between closed and open adult-initiated learning. An open adult-initiated experience should ideally come in the form of a provocation or invitation, use open-ended resources and have open-ended outcomes for the children to learn about. We can think of provocations as coming from children's wonderings. Perhaps you have observed something in their play and can use this as an opportunity to extend their learning. Or you may decide that an invitation to learn, which comes from the adult wonderings, would be a great way of igniting children's thinking about a topic that you are going to be exploring. For example, in maths, this might be something set up which allows children to explore the concept of measure in an open-ended way. Or in literacy, it could be a story basket which has been set up because you're going to be exploring the sequencing of stories. It is fair to say that most teachers feel confident and comfortable in planning closed adult-initiated tasks. This is probably because planning open adult-initiated tasks poses more of a challenge on our time. But the more time we can commit to observing children's play, then the easier it will become to use open-ended adult-initiated tasks that reflect children's needs and interests. Here are some examples of open-ended adult-initiated learning that have been planned to spark an interest and to ignite children's thinking. Some of the children had shown an interest in one of the books in the story corner called Somebody Crunched Colin, which is a fun story of a powerful message about plastic pollution and the benefits of recycling. The teacher had observed that the children in the class really played in the junk modelling area and decided to use the story, a discarded crisp packet found in the playground by one of the children, and a question as a provocation. This invited the children to make their own creations using the junk. This really sparked their creativity skills and encouraged lots of rich talk as they described what they wanted to make and why. It also provided a perfect opportunity to discuss during the play plenary, where the children were encouraged to think about the skills they had used to make their creations. This hadn't been part of the teacher's intentional planning, but it was planned responsively as a result of an observed interest and set up later that day and again the following day. As a result of providing this provocation, it also increased engagement in the junk modelling area, as well as lots of rich discussion about recycling and looking after our planet. In this example here of adult-initiated learning, an invitation to learn was planned around the theme of fairy tales. The children came back from lunch to find that Goldilocks had caused a mess in the Three Bears' house. This sparked the children's thinking and motivated them to find different ways of looking for her. And in this last example, an invitation to learn had been created based around the theme of spring and planting and growing. However, the children were free to explore it in any way they chose. It was planned simply to promote curiosity, exploration, and discussion. All of the examples we have shown you are examples of what we might call adult-initiated learning, or what Building a Curriculum 2 described as planned, purposeful play. However, they were all open-ended to allow the children to take the learning in their own direction. In ELK, nursery practitioners are very skilled at using core routines and experiences of the day to enhance children's learning. Core routines or experience plans demonstrate the learning that children gain from the experiences, as well as the adult role in supporting the learning within that routine or experience. Core routines which children experience every day can be used to promote and enhance the children's learning. For example, self-registration, getting ready to go outside, getting ready for lunch, washing hands, and story time. This slide shows examples of how numeracy skills can be embedded through routines, and which we could class as adult-initiated experiences. The birthday calendar promotes children's understanding of the months of the year and the idea of time as being cyclical. You could also do this with the days of the week, detailing certain events that happen on each day, for example, PE, outdoor learning, or assembly, for example. The lunch options display promotes children's understanding of time frames and a visual awareness of number, as does this example of self-registration. It is easy for the children to engage with and provides a sense of identity and belonging. Ideally, to begin with at least, it needs a teacher to be stationed at the registration station to interact with the children to help develop the children's knowledge and understanding. The experience can be levelled, for example with photos and name or just the name. You may add a Numicon to support children to see how many children are present. The visual timetable scaffolds the children to understand the flow of the day, but also consolidate their understanding of time as they see the progression through the day and use time vocabulary such as morning, afternoon, before lunch, after lunch, snack, now, next, later, for example. Using clocks and times can add challenge or differentiation in a composite class. The daily calendar supports writing numerals. Children can put on the months, the days, the date, and it's great for stretching the children who need challenge. It scaffolds a developing sense of time by crossing off the days. Little icons created for different events can be added too. For example, walk, trips to the woods, library, or the children can count the days until a birthday, trip to the woods, the weekends, or holidays. Time vocabulary can be routinely discussed. Weekend, yesterday, tomorrow, today. The children can routinely see the days change in order over and over again, supporting sequencing of the days of the week and months of the year. This slide here just shows you how core experiences are embedded through daily routines and can be used as part of your planning overview. So please take a moment to pause the slide and have a look at this. And of course, we must consider child-led play. In child-led play, the resources, experience and outcomes are freely chosen by the child and are under the control of the child. In child-led play, practitioners follow the child's thinking and does not try to lead their thinking in a different direction. The child chooses how to engage with the spaces, experience and resources and follows their own lines of inquiry with no predetermined outcome. The child chooses who joins in and may invite adults into play. There are high levels of engagement and there's spontaneous learning. It is important to remember the importance of a high-quality learning space to enable child-led play. We must ensure that we are giving our children lots of time for spontaneous play and that we are committing time to observing and extending children's play. Through interacting with children in their play, we can scaffold their learning in many ways. This can happen in the moment, where the adult notices a teachable moment, or it may lead to a shorter-term plan where the teacher adds an enhancement into the space or provides an experience. We'll be looking at this in a bit more detail further on. So here we have attempted to demonstrate how one teacher used the learning cycle to support and extend children's learning to build on their interests, which she had observed through their play. This was only achieved because the teacher made herself available to observe and extend learning. Observation is central to understand and extending the learning cycle, so we must ensure that we are planning in time for ourselves as the teachers to observe the children's learning through play. In this example, the teacher observed that the children were using lollipop sticks in the creative area to make their own mini figures and puppets. They were using pens and paper to give them faces and clothing. The next day, the teacher provided a provocation by setting up a puppet theatre. She observed how they interacted with this and noticed that the children were using their stick figures to talk to one another. This prompted her to wonder if the children knew how to use the stick puppets to retell or create a story. During the next story time, the teacher used this opportunity to model the process of retelling a familiar story using the puppets. This scaffolded the children's learning, which they were able to transfer into their own play. To build on this and provide further challenge, the teacher later introduced story stacks alongside open-ended resources to encourage children to retell existing stories and to create their own. This is a great example of a teacher observing and interpreting learning and using this knowledge to provide a fun, relevant and meaningful experience for the children. Here is an example of how the observation was captured and recorded. This is just one example of how you may capture and document learning through play. However, it is important to note there is no expectation that everything you observe is to be recorded. This example demonstrates a way in which you could capture your planning in response to interests. The key is to ensure that your approach is manageable and meaningful to you and your children. Another approach could have been to record a flowbook page or a Showby entry to capture this. We will look more closely at observation and assessment in session 4. Please take a moment to pause the slide and ask yourself the following reflective questions. What is the balance of child-initiated, adult-led learning in your setting? And what could you do to tip the scales to be more child-led? Okay, so now we're going to move on to have a think about the adult role and our interactions in play pedagogy. Please take a moment to pause the presentation and read the slide. As recognised by Education Scotland, the role of the adult in enabling play pedagogy is not an easy one. It requires a focus on children learning and not on teachers teaching. Early years pedagogy is very much based upon the social constructive approach, which recognises that children all have a unique set of knowledge and skills, and there's an enormous amount of trust placed in the developmental abilities of the children. It recognises that children learn best through social interactions and active learning, and our role is to facilitate and mentor children's abilities. To do this, we must allow ourselves more time to observe and interact in children's play. Let's take a moment to think about teaching. If we define teaching as helping children to understand something, take a moment to think about all the different ways in which you teach. Please pause the presentation to do this. There are many ways in which we help children to learn. In this statement, Ofsted say that teaching should not be taken to imply a top-down or formal way of working. It is a broad term which covers many different ways in which adults help young children to learn. It includes the interactions with children during planned and child-initiated play and activities. These include communicating and modelling language, showing, explaining, demonstrating, exploring ideas, encouraging, questioning, recalling, providing a narrative for what they are doing, facilitating and setting challenges. This helps us to recognise the value of all the different things you do each day which supports children's learning. So the following slide helps us to think about child-led play and how we can plan responsibly through child-led play. In the Moment Planner refers to the adult role in recognising opportunities in children's play for that teachable moment that can support and extend learning. It is important, though, to take a step back and wait, watch, wonder before stepping in. Firstly, we need to observe what's happening. It can be tempting to step in straight away, especially if the play is messy or disruptive, but we must hold back and remember to wait, watch and wonder. Only then can we decide whether we need to step in and teach or not. Consider that phrase, am I interacting or am I interfering? If we decide we will step in, we plan in the moment rather than having a predetermined learning intention and outcome, like we do at the beginning of a traditional teaching session. The blue part of the diagram shows just some of the ways we teach in the moment. The last part is arguably the most important though, because it helps us to reflect on our teaching. Did it make a difference to that child? What was the impact for them? Or maybe we realise we didn't need to step in during that moment. To be able to do this, we need to make time to observe play. It is unrealistic to be able to observe all children all the time, so it is worthwhile coming up with a system to make this manageable. This could be choosing a particular child or a particular children over a day or week to focus your observations on. In the book by Anna Epgrave, Planning the Moment, she tells us that every time an adult looks at and listens to a child, they are assessing and planning how to respond. These assessments and plans are based on the adult's observation of the child in that moment, and also draw on any previous knowledge of the child. She goes on to tell us that it is interacting with the children that will have an impact. Within the book, she describes examples of how practitioners have thousands of interactions with children daily. She talks about observing, assessing and teaching all in a matter of moments and explains how it is better to respond instantly to these and have minimal documentation. It is impossible to capture everything, but it's important to think about how you can achieve this in a way that is manageable, but also impactful for the children. We will look at this more closely in our next session, Observation and Assessment. Here's an example of how a teacher planned responsibly, in the moment, to extend children's learning in their play. The photo shows children role-playing an ice cream shop. These children were observed improvising in role-play area to create an ice cream shop. The adult extended this by asking children what other resources they needed. The children shared their ideas, and tubs, cups, plastic spoons, coloured pom-poms were added as well as tweezers. As the play progressed, the children asked for a till and money, and the teacher suggested the creation of their own menus and price lists, providing the children with the opportunity to develop their writing skills in a meaningful and fun context. As a result of this interaction, the children's learning was deepened by the teacher, who recognised the teachable moment while being sensitive to the children's own ideas and direction of play. The children demonstrated social skills of turn-taking, sharing ideas, talking and listening, using relevant vocabulary in their play, as well as applying their knowledge of phonics and letter formation to help write price lists and menus. Responsive planning is about noticing when the children are truly engaged in deep learning. You cannot respond to everything. Be selective. Where can you add value and develop or extend their learning? It might be enabling them to continue their play by leaving the resources out so they can carry on the following session of the day. It might be interacting with them to extend their thinking, example asking questions or posing further ideas. Please take a moment to pause the slide and ask yourself the following reflective questions. Can you think of a time when you have deepened children's learning in their play? And what was the impact of this on the children's learning? So how do we go about organising our day? There is no set rule of how we should split our day. As noted previously, realising the ambition tells us that developing the right balance between child-initiated, adult-initiated and adult-directed experiences will depend on the uniqueness of the needs of each setting's children and wider context, including the cultural environment in which children learn and play. However, we should plan for most of the day being child-led with as few interruptions as possible across the learning day. Adult-led and child-led learning can take place alongside each other. We should enable children to have choice and control of their play, and planning should be responsive and flexible. We should aim for a balanced approach depending on our individual levels of confidence with play and the unique needs of our schools and children. Here is just one example of how Zoe Curry from Primlands Primary School in Kelso plans her day. You will see that she plans for extended times of play in the morning session and again in the afternoon. Her role in this time is to observe, support and extend children's play. Remember, this is just one example and there is no set way. If you are new on your play journey, then a starting point would be to reflect on your current timetable and look at how often children are given the opportunity to play. Where could you begin to introduce it? Knowing your children, would the morning or afternoon be better to plan time for play? Are there activities that could be removed from your timetable, for example library time? Do the children need to be visiting the library weekly? A rich reading corner within your class would provide them with a more developmentally appropriate experience. Perhaps the library visits could be reduced or introduced towards the end of Primary 1. Another activity to reflect on is assembly. Is it developmentally appropriate for Primary 1 children to sit through an hour of assembly every week? This could be valuable playtime. It is worth discussing this with your senior management team and planning a more suitable approach to experiences such as assembly. You will notice on the example here that in this specific block, music and art are not planned for within a direct teaching time, but are instead carefully planned through the provision of the learning space. This is another way in which you could look for opportunities to reduce more adult-led time. Reflecting on your learning space and how it is resourced to give children experiences of the curriculum will support you in utilising this. And here's another example of a weekly timetable. If you look at the bottom of the timetable, it'll help you to understand the different initials within the timetable itself. A play plenary is a great way of encouraging children to think about their play. It helps them understand and appreciate the different skills and knowledge they have used in their play. All of these photos have resulted from children's freely chosen play. Young children are competent and capable of leading their own learning. As teachers, we need to make time to observe, enabling us to understand and, if appropriate, skillfully extend the learning. We need to be careful not to jump to conclusions about what we think the children were interested in learning and it is only through careful observation that we can understand this. At the end of the day or a session, using a plenary encourages children to share their play and reflect on the skills they have used to enable their play. Plenary sessions are used to support and identify unintentional learning and skills developed through the children's self-directed play. Embedding play plenaries into practice also demonstrates that the adult values learning through play. Here are some questions that you might ask to prompt children's thinking. Who did you need to communicate with in your play? How were you creative in your play? What did you create? What did you have to do to keep on trying in your play? What was the result of persevering? Who did you need to cooperate with in your play? What did you need to do? A question of the week is an approach shared by a second level teacher who poses one question every week, and the children have to reflect back on their learning through play to answer it. For example, one question of the week might be, what does good communication in play look like? And then within this, within the children's plenaries, they have then got to chat about and explore what good communication looked like in their play. Plenaries are an important opportunity for children to share and articulate their learning. Some teachers are starting to use the 4 capacities and meta skills to help children explain and understand the skills they are learning when they play. Further information about this can be found on our P1 Play Pedagogy Padlet. We have considered a balance of the day for P1 teachers so far in this presentation. However, many teachers in SPC have composite classes. The 5 Play Pedagogy Toolkit advises that the 3 approaches to learning should remain the same at each primary stage. However, the balance will change depending on the learning and the developmental stage of each child in order to meet their needs and support progression. This is skillfully achieved at each stage through using observation. As the child reaches the middle years, observation becomes less child-led and more child-directed, where children decide what they want to learn, plan how they're going to achieve this, and source their own resources across the indoor and outdoor zones. This will require less verbal planning and a more plan-do-review process. The plenary can be used to identify the learning and skills development or explain any misconceptions. Plenaries will be more frequent at the early level and include more frequent mini plenaries. As children progress to first and second level, the plenary will become more of an opportunity to reflect, understand and articulate learning and consider next steps. The resource that you can see on your screen, called How Good Is Our Play for Learning, was developed by Forth Valley and Falkirk Council. It's a really useful resource and you can use it to help deepen understanding of adult-led, adult-initiated and child-led learning. The full resource is available through a quick Google search, or you can also find it on our Play Padlet. So now for the follow-up activity. Take a moment to think about what one thing could you do to make your pedagogy more play-based in the next week, the next term and the next year. Think about why and how you will do this, and you'll have the opportunity to discuss and share this at the follow-up session on the 21st of January. Breaking this down into these 3 time frames will enable you to make positive planned action to improving your play pedagogy practice. Professional learning is just the seed for change, and without this positive planned action, there will be little impact. So here's a quick recap of our key messages in relation to balance of the day. A balance of child-led, adult-initiated and adult-led learning is central to using play as a vehicle for high-quality learning, teaching and assessment. Children need extended times of uninterrupted play, and teachers must dedicate time to observing children's play. Children's interests and needs observed through play should be used by a teacher to plan for children's learning. And a quality learning environment and high levels of engagement and involvement are key. We hope that this training has been helpful in helping you to reflect on your own provision of adult-led, adult-initiated and child-led play and leads to improvement to your own practice. As a reminder, to complete the balance of the day training, you are required to attend the follow-up session on the 21st of January and be prepared to share your follow-up activity. We look forward to seeing you then.